Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours, where we answer your questions 7 days a week. Let's jump into those questions. Bill, what do we got?
Robert Green's going to start us off this morning from Los Angeles with thoughts on the Resolve 20 beta audio features and how does it compare to Reaper?
Go, Jeff.
Well, they are two very, very completely different apps for sure. So we were talking about this. There's some amazing things on the version 20 beta in every portion of Resolve, including Fairlight, which is the DAW that's somewhat integrated into Resolve. And the AI features in particular, very impressive, and I'm trying to test as many as possible. I have already used some of them, some of the intelligent leveling where you can match, particularly if you're getting pickups where, something is recorded at a different time and it's not exactly matching. This can help you. And in fact, I was impressed at how quickly and perfectly it leveled up. You could do also EQ matching, so you can try and there's some third-party tools that have been doing this for a while, but if you're in a different space, for example, and you want to try and recreate the sound of something that was in the studio space, for example, great for folks, for voiceovers that try and pick up jobs on the road from hotels. Some improvements, I think, to their voice isolation, which is their AI kind of version of Clarity VX. It's, I would say, on par, very, very, that's not new, but it seems like it's improved. That's very, very good. So there's some impressive tools in here. It is still many of the things I bang my head against the wall because each of the sections or portions of it, the editor is different. So, and it's little things that there's no functional reason why, buttons don't work the same way. Keyboard shortcuts are still not matching up. There's simple things you can't do. And that's the difference between Reaper. Now, they're not winning any UI awards. Alex, I got a funny reaction seeing it again recently. And they're I think they've resolved themselves to say, okay, we're not winning UI awards. Let's focus on the underlying tech, but that's really where it shines. The difference is you could see the features on screen here is just a list of one of the latest updates. And most of these are additions, not fixes. And
Jeff, you've used both of these pretty extensively.
I routinely use both of them. Yes.
Yeah. And so just a flat out comparison, where do you feel like Reaper is better?
Well, Reaper is better as a pure DAW. And if you can put in the time to learn it and to really customize it, where it really shines is its customization and extensibility. There's a full scripting language. And by the way, ChatGPT and Gemini are pretty good at writing code, Lua and JavaScript and other things that you can write code in. So you can customize every single aspect of it. The UI, you can make your own buttons, your own toolbars, you can make your own functions, which is incredible. It has sped up my workflow ridiculously because I can combine a bunch of different functions into one shortcut. Virtually none of this is possible in Resolve. So the extensibility, there's a huge community that has designed scripts. I mean, there's people that have just, coders that have designed incredible extensive scripts. And again, now it's a little bit easier to quickly bang something out with ChatGPT. Right. And also third-party tools like there's SWS tools, which virtually everyone installs. And these are all third-party community tools. The pricing is also ridiculously generous, but it's not the easiest thing to use. It can do light video. Of course, if you're working on video also, then hands down, DaVinci Resolve is great. The free version, by the way, is amazing. When you start getting into some of the AI tools, that's where you do need the studio license. But so far, although they announced at NAB that this could change, but so far you buy it once, the studio license, and then you get free upgrades indefinitely. They may start charging for some of the more advanced AI tools, it seems like.
That's great. Thanks, Jeff. Next question.
Next one comes from Douglas Carmichael, and Douglas wonders, has anyone tried Mixbus 11 yet? From my experiments with it, it seems to be more focused on a conventional analog-style workflow rather than deep editing or effects, and he's got a link there to the Harrison Audio site.
And we had Harrison on quite a while ago talking about Mixbus here. So this is Mixbus, and of course, it's a software-based mixer. And there's Mixbus and Mixbus Pro. One of the things they added to Mixbus Pro, which is something we asked for when we first had them on, was Dolby Atmos immersive mixing. So now there's some surround tools up to 714, I think, or that's what they're laying out there. And so I think that's a move towards that. I think one of the hard things that for a lot of folks building mixers is that it's hard to get people out of the thought process. People want it to work like their mixer, and so when people build something that is not like that, you see things like On Hertz and Llama Audio starting to build things that aren't a traditional interface. It's an uphill battle oftentimes with people who already do it because they just want it to do the thing that it did. And so I think that's why you see it kind of look like an analog mixer. I think that's very limiting, but I understand where it's coming from. Yeah, go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, certainly Harrison, their pedigree is in making mixing consoles. They've made mixing consoles, actual hardware, mixing consoles from analog days, even up to now with digital consoles. And they've carried that on with their DAW. There are a bunch of DAWs that are primarily and very heavily shifted towards mixing, not so much the editing side of things. Other examples of that would be like Universal Audio's Luna or PreSonus's Studio One. They have very capable mix engines, but their editing capabilities aren't there. And those types of DAWs are often primarily designed for music production, music mixing, wherein you're not diving in as often or as much in terms of the editing of it, and you're spending more time on the mix. If you need a DAW that has more editing capabilities, earlier Reaper was mentioned, very strong editing capabilities. Pro Tools, of course, along with Cubase and Nuendo, have very strong editing capabilities. When it comes to editing MIDI, Logic is the absolute powerhouse with editing MIDI. But these are different types of tools, and you pick the right tool for the job depending on what you're doing.
Next question.
Next one comes to us from David Brady in New York City, and David wonders, TrueSync is an AI-powered visual dubbing technology that gives filmmakers and advertisers the freedom to preserve their creative vision in any language. What are the panelists' thoughts on this direction GenAI is taking?
Go ahead, Jeff.
I think this is great. I can show a little bit of the video with the audio that demos it, if you'd like to see. Have it queued up.
Just a little. Yeah.
Yeah. It just shows directly what they claim to be doing. Now, I do think it's funny that they picked a scene where these folks are eating, which may mask a little bit of it, but
into any language.
Can you hear it?
Je fais un documentaire sur une fourmi. Ça fait 2 jours qu'il fait que ça. He's making a documentary about an ant, and he's been doing that for 2 days.
Let audiences.
So, seem to get it right, and I do think this is great, because whether the dubbed voiceover is AI or not, it can be distracting sometimes when you notice those differences of the mouth moving versus the dub track. So if this can correct it well, or even better, although I was thinking about it, I thought, well, what's the worst that can happen as long as it gets a little bit better? But as we know with AI, I mean, if they don't check it, it could go horribly wrong. But if it does what it says, I think it's great.
Go ahead, Mickey.
I think the industry right now, from what I've seen personally, and also with discussions with other studio managers and studio owners globally, is that the industry still seems to be in a state of figuring things out, finding out what the threshold is in terms of quality of production that they are willing to use AI for. From my point of view, I think it makes, in terms of localization work, it might make more sense for smaller markets to utilize AI, generative AI, for the localization work, and do high quality traditional dubbing for larger markets, say for localization to Mandarin or to Spanish or to Hindi. The larger markets keep it at the high quality, while do just makes sense business wise. Do a slightly more affordable workflow for markets that bring in less revenue for the media company. What I'm seeing though is that in terms of with localization, I'm seeing a lot more generative AI with the visuals and the lip movement, but a lot less in terms of the actual voice dubbing. And it's interesting because while this has been going on, using generative AI for dubbing has been growing in popularity for the past year and a half, 2 years. At the same time, in the past year and a half, 2 years, companies such as Netflix and Disney Plus have been really aggressive in locking down partner studios for their actual real human dubbing.
This is not dubbing.
So what I see is what I see is they're still figuring it out. Where does Gen AI exactly come in and at what markets?
Yeah, I mean, I had a pretty long conversation with someone in LA about this and that works in this area, and they didn't see themselves ever getting rid of the artists that were doing the dubbing, or maybe not never, but very rarely, because they still need all the right pronunciations. And so what they were doing is having the person still do what would be like dubbing, but what they're using is AI to get the same vocal quality out of so you're getting, it sounds like the actor's mouth is moving, but the actual pronunciation of the words is coming from still a person who would have been the person dubbing them, that has a similar voice, that has a similar structure, and so on and so forth. But they need the pronunciation still. They're like, they can't just hand it to AI and have it do it. They need to still have it there. So it's not really in this case, they need to reproduce that somewhere. Like something has to do the pronunciation for it. And I believe I think that they were using Respeecher for. I believe they're using Respeecher for some of the stuff from The Brutalist. I think that was the issue of kind of tuning up all of the words that were done by the actor weren't as accurate as they needed to be, and so they used a Titan. It was a lot of controversy, but the person I talked to about it was like, in 5 years, maybe 2, you're not going to hear anybody's voice again. Like you're not going to hear the dubber's voice again. They're still doing it. But once they figure out the pipeline for this, their opinion is that you're always going to want to see the actor with their mouth doing what it's doing and hearing their voice in that language. And so as soon as that becomes smooth, no one's going to want to go backwards, like to have, old-fashioned dubbing. In fact, he said that he thinks there's going to be a huge industry going back, like to all the, like there's thousands of movies. He said, so it's going to be thousands of movies getting redone, with this process. Yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, sorry, just to be clear, unless I'm missing something about this particular tool that's being asked about from this company, the TrueSync is not about the audio. The TrueSync is correcting the visual lip mouth movements. So regardless of where the audio is coming from, whether the audio you're having AI generative voices or human dubbed voices for localization, what this tool does is changes the actual mouth to sync up correctly with that audio. That's what this tool does.
But I think that a combination of all these tools, what they're talking about is soon they're going to use the dubbing track, and oftentimes they're talking about actually doing video of the person so that they have the visual reference for the mouth. So they're talking, and this is why he was so excited. He's like, this could be work for 5 years for them, because as many as they could possibly do, because the issue that they have is they need video tracks to do it as at the highest level. They need they need to see the person doing it, because they're going to use the AI of their mouth to drive the actor's mouth to do the pronunciation, and they said that so it's just explosive. This is where we don't know what happens with AI. You go, oh, it's not going to create any job. It's going to take away a bunch of jobs. It's just oftentimes technology takes jobs away and gives them somewhere else. And this is what he was talking about anyway. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I meant about we're seeing a lot more generative AI used for the visual side of things, but the quality of generative AI in terms of speech, voice, emotions isn't there yet. So they're utilizing AI for visuals, but still doing real dubbing, real human voice dubbing for the voices in the speech.
Good, Bill.
One of the things that's been interesting to me lately is I've come through, when I'm consuming audiobooks, there's been about 3 instances over the past 2 months as I've been listening to something where the pronunciation of an actual live actor differs from what I expected, and it pulled me out of the book. And it just caused me to think about how different regional pronunciations are, how many localizations there are about how things are pronounced. For example, I used to summer when I was a kid in a little town in northern Arizona called Prescott, and it's pronounced by everybody who lives in the area as Prescott. But if you look at it read, it's Prescott, C-O-T-T. And so it's one of those regionalisms where if you don't know it, nothing is going to figure it out correctly. And I'm not sure they're ever going to get around to that level of granularity. And then the other thing is, like, what is the correct pronunciation? There's so many terms that are in that where, across this state line, they pronounce it this way, but when you get over to another community, they pronounce it differently. It's going to be a real struggle to get this right.
We've also had actors that didn't get very close to their actual accents. So
Totally.
I don't think that
Mary Poppins and Dick Van Dyke.
I'm from Pittsburgh, and there's a TV show called The Pit, and nobody talks like that from Pittsburgh. At best, we've got one person that talks like she's from New York, but there's no, hey, these guys going down there, because I'm sitting there, and I saw the guy coming in, and I saw it's Mario, that's what it should sound like, and that doesn't sound like that. Go ahead, Mickey.
Right.
And when it comes to pronunciations, that's why having I don't know how you call it, the chain of command there, the director and the producers that should know. Well, it's their job to know and to direct the talent. That's why they're supposed to be there. And because at some point things will shift more to generative AI, even for the voices. When that happens, that checksum that happens still needs to occur.
Yeah, and I was just, what was I watching that was so bad? I was watching a piece of Deadpool 2 last night, and there's this part where they jump out of the plane and they come down and they're doing their thing. And there's a part where his Deadpool's parachute gets caught on this billboard and he swings down. And the physics of him swinging and hitting the billboard are just atrocious. Like, I'm like, you guys spent so much money on that movie, and it's a key part of the film. Like, what were you guys doing? Like, it's just so bad. Yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
You mentioned the fact that they're recording the mouth movements of the localized voiceovers that are doing the dubbing, but don't you think all those folks are doing are helping to train the replacements again? In other words, after a certain amount of training, it will learn enough.
We talked about that,
to do those movements.
We talked about that, and the problem is that what he brought up, and I don't know, I don't know enough about dubbing, but was that because I said, look, eventually do you get rid of those folks? And he's like, no, maybe not. He goes, there's so much complicated things when you're angry, when you're sad, when you're doing other things with your mouth, that getting the AI to do it well could take years. There's a lot. Oh, it's like if I'm angry and I'm talking like this, or I'm really like, there's a lot of different ways to say that word. And there's all these things. It's because they're remapping that mouth, and then they have to remap it in. And he was like, it's going to take a long time to do it at the level of feature films. Like, you can do it for a meme much easier. But if you're talking about, like the memes are easy to do, but people go, a lot of times when people talk about AI, they're like, I did 3 seconds I did 3 seconds for TikTok, and now the Hollywood is over, and you're kind of like, okay, well, there's a lot, there's a dark drop from there. Anyway, next question.
Next question comes from Mike Edwards in Brooklyn, New York. Morning, everyone. For a 4-camera stream, how many hyperdecks would the panel recommend to get a record of their entire production? All of them.
Yeah, go ahead, Ronnie.
Yeah, I'm going to approach this from a few different directions. First and foremost, 1 is none, 2 is 1. So if you're thinking of fault failover, you should have at least 2 as a minimum, both recording the program. But there is a different way also to see this, and that is if you have a really good TD or technical director that is actually doing the switching between those cameras while you record. Of course, you can only and think of this as your master recording, and you record that to 1 or 2 devices. You don't mention budget, so I'm not going to go into that part about cost. But if you are on a budget, you need at least 1, of course, having the program feed going out. And sometimes when you're using just 1 recorder, I would recommend you just record a clean feed so that you can do graphics and overlays afterwards in post-production. The most thing that we do is to have 2 recorders doing the same source. Sometimes we do a program record and we do a clean feed record, which is without graphics. But there is always some things that goes wrong that you would like to adjust in post. And in that case, you at least need 4 for each of the ISO to have an ISO recording. So you need 1 recorder for each camera. And this comes with a little, it depends. If you are using a 4K recorder, you can use a multiplexer or a 2x2 that can gather 4 different 1080 sources and record them simultaneously on 1 4K recorder. That is another way to do it. So to expand on that one, you also need to probably record the program out and probably also a clean feed. And then you use 3 recorders for this. But the ultimate solution would be 6 recorders, where you have ISO recording of each camera. If you don't do that recording inside camera, if you do it inside camera, you have the 2:1 rule applying there. So you have 1 recording in the camera, 1 recorder on each of the camera's recorders, and then you have a clean feed recording on the 5th one, and on the 6th recorder you have the finished program out. So it's very much up to the budgets, but at least 2 recording devices that is able to secure 1 copy if 1 fails.
Good, Mickey.
Yeah, Ronnie covered a good lot there. I would say the best number of hyperdecks would be 0, and I would recommend the AJA Key Pro as an alternative, a certainly more robust, more reliable system, in my experience, compared to Blackmagic design hardware. But if you want to stick with Blackmagic design hardware, yes, an ISO, if you want to capture the entire production, as your question states, 4 recording decks for each of your cameras, ISOs, a program recording and a clean feed recording, and redundancy if that's something that you can budget for. There is Ronnie alluded to being able to record multiple channels on a single deck. There is the HyperDeck 8K, which can record up to 4 UHD channels in a single deck. The AJA Key Pro can record up to 4 1080 channels within the single deck, but doing that means you're putting 4 eggs in 1 basket. So if 1 recorder goes down, you lose 4 channels of recording. There is also an argument. Well, some productions like to also record some of their graphics key and fill outputs, especially when there is important live telemetry in it, say for sporting events where you have time, location, speed information in the graphics. That may be helpful for post-production if there is a fast turnaround where they cannot quickly recreate the graphics in post. And lastly, going along the lines of telemetry as well, RAW video with their Mira replay server systems have recently, I think in the past year, added the capability to not only record the video feed for their replay system, but also record the telemetry of their camera in terms of their camera tracking, so that if ever you're doing any AR-related graphics or AR graphics with your, especially like with sporting events, you can record that camera move, pre-record the camera move, play it back, and it will stream the camera telemetry information back at the same time, in time with the video feed, so that you can put in live graphics timed with your camera move, matched with your camera move that has been pre-recorded. So that's very powerful. So it depends exactly on what the production's requirements are, and what the budget is in terms of this capturing and recording workflow that they're doing.
Yeah, I will say that on the other side of it, the only place I've really lost any significant amount of recording is with AJA recorders, which is why I don't use them, because they used to have a closing problem where they wouldn't close the file and they wouldn't close the drive, and I had an operator hit one button and knock out all of my ISOs. There's a lot of scar tissue for me with the Key Pros specifically, and I've owned probably, I don't know, 50 or 60 hyperdecks. So the the main thing the hyperdecks had a problem with when they were the older ones, and if you ever get an older one, is heat. So you had to basically pair them up. They had to have one thing. That hasn't been a problem for quite some time now. We stack them pretty deep. This is this is an example of a lot of hyperdecks, as you can see, tied up here. In this case, we were recording 2 cleans, 2 programs, and every camera, and then also recording in the cameras as well. A lot of times what happens is that we're recording whatever our output is for our records on the hyperdecks, but we will oftentimes want to record log or raw inside the cameras, so that if we really want to do a lot of fine tuning later, that we can do that re-edit. So it just depends on what we're doing there. Next question.
Ron Koschek in Toronto. For a Zoom webinar with 1,000 participants, some videos, some talking heads, and maybe breakouts, but limited in-house computer resources, what are the pros and cons of running the Zoom in the cloud?
I go ahead, Ronnie.
As I understand the question, and I might be wrong, is if you're trying to mix everything in the cloud, like in vMix or even Mimo Live using the Mac clouds. But the Zoom is natively a cloud thing. So your client is only watching or sending your video into the cloud. So you don't actually need that much of a hardware. You need enough hardware to be able to send the resolution from you. So that can be a limiting factor. If you have an older computer with a low-C camera, you might not be able to send the highest bit rates and the highest quality from your place. But from a management point of view, the most limiting factor is actually bandwidth coming in. So I'm not sure how you're going to use this for the 1,000 seats, but everything is happening in the cloud. So you're kind of having just a view into that meetings feeds, and there is a maximum number of cameras you can watch at the same time on your own machine. So I'm going to have 1,000, at least the license is 1,000. I hope there will be not 1,000 people this Sunday. They will all be wanting to raise their hand and collaborate in the discussions. I would guess that only a few of them will have their camera feeds coming in. And of course, the main panel and the chair, etc., will have their cameras, but they choose not to have this as a webinar. So it will be kind of fun to test out. And what we are thinking here is that the machines they are operating is normal Mac. I think it's M1s. They have 2 laptops they are going to control the entire meeting from. So this is where we are hands-on. We just created everything for them, and they will do everything themselves. I think that is not a problem, and they will probably also have some screens and displays in their office to be able to watch a few of these camera angles. So I think it's unproblematic, but if this is a multi-camera angle video switching operation, definitely we'll think about doing that in the cloud.
Good, Mickey.
Yeah, I would say that aside from the starting with the pros, obviously you have the ability to scale very quickly and very affordably without affecting your capital expenditure. You're pushing the expense off to, depending on how you manage your books, to your cost of goods or your operational expenses. So that's one of the reasons why cloud production is very attractive. From the technical side, depending on exactly what you need to do. If it's something very simple, I think the largest possible issue for me might be the additional latency in terms of your monitoring of the machines, because you will have an additional hop between your cloud provider and your local instances for monitoring purposes and whatever else you need to do locally on your side. But with a very simple setup, there's very little downside with running things in the cloud, in my opinion.
The main thing is you just have to practice it a lot. It's a very different pipeline. So you're going to need to hire somebody to do it or practice it quite a bit to make sure that it's going to work. I have done a fair number of webinars, and to be honest with you, the way we do it, unless there's a lot of whiz bang. So if you're talking about some playback videos, talking heads, we're assuming they're coming in from, now the question is, are they coming in from locally or are they all on Zoom? If you've got talking heads from Zoom and you don't have a ton of graphics and you have just some videos to play back, we would typically use Zoom OSC with a delivery, finding a way that we're going to do a video delivery and do everything inside of Zoom to reduce the amount of latency and all the overhead that we had here. This would be a very simple, I've typically done these inside of things like Mimo Live, where I set up all my playouts and I do all my bits and pieces. Now, there are some things you're giving up from a production perspective, but if it's all inside of webinars, and especially as soon as you start saying, I'm going to do a breakout, as soon as you start doing breakouts, it just gets really complicated to try to make all of this work. And so I very quickly have retreated to webinars, and they worked great, and people are happy with them. It just depends on how much production. If you want a ton of graphics over top of the people, then you need to have production. But if you're talking about talking heads and then cutting to videos and so on and so forth, you can do a lot of that inside of native Zoom rather than trying to take it out of the system. Yeah, go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I think it would be an error if we do not mention a platform that Grant and the Blue Melnick, Grant Whitehead and Blue Melnick have built called Obvio. And this is a very powerful platform that eases up a lot of the pain points or learning curve when it comes to deploying a large-scale event in Zoom, especially when we have to integrate cloud machines.
Yeah, and one of the big things that Obvio does that really will take it to a next level is the ability to manage the breakout rooms very in granular detail. So it's one thing for you to be able to do a breakout room or a handful of breakout rooms, but if you really want to group everybody a certain way and you want to have that kind of control and you want them to be able to log in and just kind of set that up, Obvio is definitely the way to go. Next question.
Jason in Las Vegas wonders, have you seen Strada at NAB 2025 that allows you to collaborate and give access to files you select, such as video for editing, over the web, bypassing the expensive cloud storage? Would you find this useful to integrate into your workflow?
Go ahead, Bill.
So Michael Cioni, who's on top of that effort along with his brother, are old friends of the show. We've actually had them on to interview. So if you look back in the archives, you'll see whole hours in our second hours that we used to do devoted to Michael. He's really bright and a very, very experienced player in the video space. He was one of the people who started Line Iron in LA, went to Frame.io, developed that whole ecosystem, sold it to Adobe, and spent a lot of time working on their things. So that you get few people with more experience and a better overview of the industry than Michael and his brother. So great talent, solid experience there at the top of things. If it fits your need, which tends to be they're working toward a larger enterprise, working in the cloud kind of productions, it's, I think, as solid a bet as you'll find. But of course, nobody knows which way the market will jump over the course of time. But in terms of trustworthy, is it solid people and a solid product? 150% yes. Again, nobody knows what the future will lean towards, but boy, the talent behind this is A1 class, in my opinion.
Yeah, Michael was on maybe a year ago, and one of the things that I lose track of time in the show, so it could have been 2 years ago. I'm not sure exactly whether it was 1 year or 2 years, but Michael was on, and they have. It's not just. I mean, this is one piece of it, collaborating and access. But one of the things that was super exciting is using AI to basically be able to look at all your footage and tag it all, down to the frame of this is when these things are happening, realigning things. Being able to, and I think that it's going to be transformational, somewhat for narrative, but for documentary and lots of things where you're shooting, 50 to 1 or 100 to 1, and you're trying to find something. AI is going to transform this market, and Strada is right on the front edge of that. So, highly recommend keeping an eye on what Strada is doing. Next question.
Harshi Trivedian, Daytona Beach, Florida, and here on the panel, would a Zoom H6E be a decent capture device for a conference or convention use? It'll be connected to either a Samsung B22 Ultra or Pixel 9 Pro or a Fold.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I haven't tried the Zoom H6E, but I have not used a Zoom product that sounds good. Saying that, I would highly recommend. I don't know if you can find them used and how much they would be, but if so, I would highly recommend trying to look for a Sound Devices Mix Pre-D. This is part of the. This was the second version of the Mix Pre. I think launched in 2010, I believe. And it's an analog mixer, 2-channel analog mixer, but also has an audio interface built in. It is very similar to the Sound Devices USB Pre 2 that the Alex likes so much, but is a lot more affordable. So, sorry, I was trying to pull up a photo but couldn't get the high quality one. But yeah, try to look for a Sound Devices Mix Pre D, D as in Delta. It gives you tactile control because it's a proper analog mixer, but it has an audio interface built in.
And I will say that for the Zoom products, I have found that the F series is much better than the H series. So if you're gonna go down the Zoom route, you want to probably look at the F series. The preamps are significantly better. Next question.
Angelo Jack in Brooklyn, New York wonders, hello panel, I'm considering buying a new digital mixer and have come down to a choice between the Yamaha DM3-D and the Allen Heath SQ or QU series. Any advice?
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, for me, and I've actually very recently, a week and a half ago, been in the same position trying to decide between a DM3-D and an SQ series. What it comes down to, from my point of view, is your required channel count. The SQ, like the SQ5, I believe, is a 48 channel mixer. You can add stage boxes and other digital inputs to build up to that 48 channels. While the Mix Pre-D is 16 normal input channel mixer. When you have a couple of stereo and FX return channels to, I think, build up to 22 channels, but your real mixing channels are just 16. For me, if you can comfortably do the job with 16 channels, then I would go with Yamaha just because of better preamps generally on Yamaha systems, as well as after-sales support, build quality. But if you require more than 16 channels, I would move up to SQ. I would totally skip the Q series, the QU series, and move up to an SQ5.
Good, Ronnie.
Yeah, agreed. Don't go with the QU series. If you're going to have a very small compact mixer, and depending on use, without physical faders, you can of course go with the cheaper series from Allen Heath, which is called CQ. I have one on my desk. That's just a non-physical interface. You have a display and you can remote control it, etc. But as Mickey said, if you need more channel counts than the DM3 can provide you, I would go with the SQ. We have multiple SQ series mixers in different sizes. 5. They are in 3 different sizes plus the rack version. And the rack version again does not have physical faders, so that is also a solution. It's pretty new. So you have the smaller SQ5 and you have the SQ6, and we also have a SQ7 with Dante in all of these. We use them for our own productions, and we use them when we are in the studio or out on the road, and we also do rental with them. And they are kind of good for their price point. They have pretty advanced functionality that you normally find in these types of mixers, and we have replaced our entire rental stock with SQ series, and have been using them for years, and are looking on also adding the rack to our inventory. So that's my 2 cents.
I've seen a lot of CQs for small bands. So small bands that have a small stage setup, and it seems to be a pretty good one. I believe it is controllable with the iPad as well. Like it'll tie in, so you see someone like the band's rehearsing, and their audio engineers kind of walking around, listening to things and figuring things out. Because a lot of times they don't get to put the mixer where they want it, in a small bar. So yeah, next question.
Next question comes to us from Roz McNulty in Vancouver, Canada. Would it be worth scanning the family photos with a professional scanning service? Again, many of the hundreds of photos were scanned over 10 years ago. I think I should, she says.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Love this question, especially that nuance at the end there. We all know this question, which is, you want to do it. You're really just looking for a little bit of confirmation to tell you that you made the right decision there. Like a lot of questions on this show, the real answer is, well, it depends. How did you scan them originally? Were they professionally scanned 10 years ago? Did you scan from the prints or did you scan from the negatives? All of those, what file sizes did you keep? Did you get a CD full of files? I've had a bunch of family photos scanned professionally, and actually it was about 9 years ago. And they're definitely great high-res photos. That being said, if you didn't do all that, if you scan them yourself with your home scanner or whatever, then there's no question that you're going to get today with modern equipment, with a reputable company, assuming, by the way, that you either have the negative still, or if you're going by prints, those prints are now 10 years older. So if they're not significantly damaged, if they've been kept and stored well, you can get some very high quality professional scanning, and I think it's a great idea.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I think we've had a couple questions over, I think, the past week about scanning film, and I would definitely ask, like in the situation where you're finding yourself in now, I would, if I'm going to go ahead and digitize a bunch of analog media, be it photos, be it tape, be it whatever it is, I would get it digitized at the highest quality possible. There was a question yesterday or a couple of days ago about buying a really affordable scanner to scan some film. And yeah, I definitely wouldn't waste the time and effort on that. I'll just get the best quality I can at that point in time, so that it pushes away further the next time I want to redigitize it, if the original media still exists. My thought is, go to a professional service, come in with knowing exactly what specifications you want your media digitized at, and make sure they deliver that. That way, you know for sure that you've done your homework and know for sure what you want, and make sure that you get it.
Go ahead, Bill.
So for me, this is a tough question because I'm struggling with two sides of it. Yes, we all think it would be great to have higher res stuff of our generations past. That's what we're really planning on doing by spending a lot of time and effort on this for the future. The question is, will people really be interested in that? And within a family, there's a good chance they will. But that has to be, I think, balanced between the idea of how are you passing this along as a boon or a burden to the future generations? Will they be really interested in going back 3 or 4 generations and having large, high-res, complicated documents full of maybe mediocre stuff? And I say that because I've seen a lot of family photos, and a lot of them, they're not professionally taken. They're just snapshots here or there. So if I had a gigantic res shot of a mediocre photo of a distant relative, why am I carrying that few through the history? Will they get the context? Am I going to go in and narrate it all so that they understand who this person even is? There's just a lot of storage ideas there. And I noted that even documentarians like Ken Burns, who do fabulous work, they're working with lower, older, not tremendously great res photos, but the story still gets told brilliantly, and it makes a compelling piece of historical information. He didn't worry if he didn't have a gigantic piece of resolution there. Now, photos do have more resolution than the typical early digital stuff, but still, what's the purpose of this? And we all think that our family stories are the most important things. To us, they are, but to the marketplace or to this burden of passing down huge volumes of information about distant relatives, I'm not sure I'm there. And maybe it's just because I'm working with all these DV-CAN tapes from early in my career that have tons and tons of information, and nobody cares at all, even a little.
I guess to counter that, I think a little bit, there are just home videos that my grandfather shot with 16 millimeter in the 50s, and it doesn't matter what they're doing. It's fascinating to watch your uncles and to watch your, the folks that have been long gone, and it's just them running around. It's completely useless information except for the fact that you see these moments that are there. I think one of the biggest problems we're going to have over we're going to be the most forgotten generation ever because it's all digital. We're not printing them. We're not saving them. When this all goes somewhere or whatever, we're going to lose lots and lots and lots of this, and we're not going to have those photos from back then. There's definitely photos that were on walls that I wish that I had scanned when I was there. Like I was staying at my grandparents' house for a while, keeping the house, and there was all these photos on the wall. And my biggest regret of being there for a year was that I didn't pull out a flatbed scanner and just scan everything that was on the wall, like one at a time, because they were just photographs, just snapshots, but they were incredible that's there. I would, think about, the big thing about owning your own scanner is that you get to control a lot more of the quality. Now, I have a V1200 from Epson. For half the price, you can get a V600. And I would think about taking the most important ones and that you don't necessarily want to send away and use something like that to do it. Most services don't run at the high resolution. I think that you're not going to get massive scans, for instance, from something like Scan Cafe, but I know a lot of people have been really happy with just sending everything out. But they're reasonably good scans. They're going to be clean scans. They're just not super high res. And so they're in like the 10 to 20 megapixel image area. Storage is pretty inexpensive. You want to go to a 321, so you have basically three copies of everything, 2 different locations and 1 in the cloud. And at this point, putting terabytes in the cloud is not that expensive. So, and you can build a lot of services out that you don't have to give everybody really high res versions either. You can easily batch process these all into something that is something they can use on their phone, and then just move from there. So that'd be my recommendation to think about. Next question.
Next question comes from Vic Fernandez in Springfield, Missouri. Were you aware of companies like COUSTIC that offer acoustic treatment solutions with an eye towards design?
Who did we have on? We had somebody actually on talking about this, and it just escapes me. Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, there's a lot of companies. In fact, all of the credible ones, I think, are doing this. Prime Acoustic, I think suggested by our own Guy Cochran. In fact, I believe he sells it, so talk to Guy about these. I mean, if you look at, if you're able to see what I have on screen, just showing a little bit of it, they're simple panels, but there's a lot of, those aren't so attractive, but a lot of great ones. There's Audi Mute. They, and a lot of, again, the reputable companies, they'll do help you with room scanning, to get real good measurements. But you see they have a lot of design-forward treatments. And then this one I love, GIK Acoustics, G-I-K Acoustics. They, our own George Detect, George Whittam has used them. And one of the things they do, among others that I love, is they will make prints. So talking about digitizing and getting good photos, you can have acoustic panels made to be basically big prints of your own artwork, photos, whatever. So there's tons of credible companies making really, really attractive stuff.
By the way, the one that we had on was Pros Acoustic panels, and they looked amazing. Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, there's no reason not to have exactly what you want if you've got the budget to make it. And there are enough companies out there doing good acoustic work, so it's scientifically based acoustic panels that do their job. You have to understand what that job is and not expect to buy, the kind of tack-up foam and expect it to be soundproofing, because it's not. But once you understand those issues, there's lots out there. Also, it's not that hard to do individual stuff. I mean, if you're looking to keep things inexpensive, you can pick fabric and build your own baffles and things like that, and pick the fabric that you like. So it can be any kind of design you want. To me, this is mostly in the area where designers are coming in and being paid to make a space, as you saw in those photos, really look cohesive and nice. And that's just, it's great that we have options of all this stuff.
I go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, certainly there are so many of these companies that make acoustic treatment solutions. There are ones that focus on like studio solutions for like productions and studios that also do architectural, and there are ones that only focus on architectural acoustic treatment. And those companies really work on, have a good product line that caters to visual aesthetics, because it will be seen by the public. And a lot of these companies also do bespoke work, custom work specific for if you're covering an entire brand new concert hall or auditorium, they'll do custom work for that project.
Next question.
Next one comes to us from Brent in Western Australia. Could the panel give an overview for someone who doesn't work in the AV industry of how office hours is put together? Is it Zoom? And if so, do you use sessions or events? Is there a lot of extra hardware other than camera, mic, and computer?
It's just raw Zoom. We don't even bother to edit it. We just let Zoom.
This is immaculately produced live.
Yeah. It just works. All those graphics, we don't even know where they come from. I think it's all AI. Yeah. Go ahead, Ronnie.
Yeah, I'm trying to give a 10,000-foot overview and not trying not to get into the weeds too much. I guess there are other people that can do that. So basically, everything is done through Zoom. So all the people you see in the panel here and in the control room that you don't see are using Zoom to be able to send video and audio into the Zoom cloud. Then we have different ways, depending on the weekdays, and you as a user or trying to get this up and running, have different ways of getting that signal out. So back in the days, we just used a pinning farm. We had different machines plugged into the same room and then just pinned each camera angle that we wanted to. Those days are gone. These days, we either use a combination of software plus hardware, and one of those solutions is something that has been developed and is now a part of the Zoom set of tools, which is called Zoom ISO, which basically just connects to the room and make it possible for you to select which camera angle and audio you are going to output into either NDI or to hardware like deck links, which gives you physical interface and baseband connections through SDI, for instance, into a physical hardware switcher. That is one route to go. Another way to do it is to just let Zoom ISO generate NDI feeds. And on your network, you can have a software switcher that are consuming NDI feeds coming into it. I'm not going to talk specifically about which type of software, but we do that using either physical hardware switchers through ISO and deck links, and we also use software like Mimo Live, for instance. You can also use vMix, and there are others as well that can also on their own connect directly to the Zoom rooms. So Mimo Live, for instance, can connect directly into the Zoom room, and you can have separate feeds coming out, and you can do stuff with each separate video angle. Same goes for Vector, which is also being used. That is also a software that can either be run locally on-prem, or you can use that in the cloud. In addition, you have vMix, for instance, which are popular to run in the cloud to do just that. And you can also use software from Zoom called Zoom Rooms to have that camera angles coming out to you from Zoom. So there are many different ways, and at office hours we do this also different ways. If you are in a weekday, if you are on a Saturday, or in the production that goes on Sunday, which is using a totally other pipeline. So that's kind of the overview how we do it. And of course, you need a good camera. You need the good front lights and maybe a backlight if you are lucky. And the most important thing is that you have a really good microphone that prevents every noise in the room. So room reverberation is coming into the microphone and isolate that. We're trying to have a really high audio quality in our production. And then you have, of course, the flow of the broadcast that is also really important.
Yeah, and to be very specific about what you're watching today, these are as Ronnie said, this is all Zoom. We use Zoom ISO, and we are using SDI. That SDI goes out into a router. That router then passes those signals. There's the router, or there's the switcher that's there. So this passes it into a ATEM constellation. So everything's routed into there. The way that the constellation is controlled is that we use Isadora as the big brain. So it has lots of rules about what we do and how it works and everything else. There's an interface built in what's called Universe. That Universe talks to Isadora. Isadora sends commands via one more Mix Effect Pro. So Mix Effect is the ATEM whisperer, and so Mix Effect will talk to the ATEM directly, but Isadora sends those commands via OSC to Isadora to Mix Effect. Mix Effect sends those to the switcher, and then the graphics are then added in addition to this with SPX. So those SPX is the graphics engine that is making that possible. We have Mukana on the back end, which manages the questions, but it also delivers data to SPX to make that happen, or SPX and to Isadora. What that means is that because we have that big brain in the center that's doing it with Isadora, in Universe, a lot of the things have been abstracted. So if they say to hit everybody who's answering the question, they don't have to individually put those people into the router. We know who those people are, or into the switcher. We know who those people are, and they're automatically brought up. So there's a lot of this is all a ton of hardware that sits in Michigan. But that's how this show gets done. And as Ronnie said, we use Vector on Monday nights. We use Ecamm on Thursday nights. We use vMix on Saturday mornings, and Zoom Production Studio on Sunday mornings. So a lot of different things. We had a moment where we were only using the hardware, and it became kind of an existential. When we had to move the hardware, there was a huge problem. And so we decided to take on finding many, many ways to do the show as opposed to one. Next question.
Next one comes to us from Alex in Montreal, Canada. What's your favorite IFB and ear-wig?
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I'm assuming you're asking about IFB earpieces. My absolute favorite for the past 6, 7, 8 years or so has been the Sidekick from Bumblebee Industries. Very, very low profile. Certainly higher quality than acoustic tubes, high quality in terms of audio fidelity. Again, like seen in the photo here, very low profile. I guess that photo doesn't want to load this time. But yeah, if you're talking about earwigs, I like the Phonak Invisity system. Now this system has been phased out by Phonak, but if you can still find it for sale somewhere, or perhaps rent it out, look for Invisity. Look for a system that runs on 216 megahertz or 72 megahertz. They're a lot, have a way, way, way more range than the current system from Phonak, which is the Roger, which runs on 2.4 gigahertz. Very compared to the the VHF systems, the range is a lot less with the 2.4 gig stuff, and that's why in their use case, what do you call this example here? You have multiple repeaters. You do not need these repeaters if you go with the Invisity VHF system. And I also wanted to point out that when I went to Phonex's website, on their product page, I saw someone who kind of looked like JJ, and it surprised me. So yeah.
Go ahead, Bill.
I also use the same brand I think Mickey was talking about. I buy them from in-ear. I've had some problems with them lately in terms of back and forth with the company, but I can't argue with the product at all. They're super small, super stealthy. They're really made for like Secret Service radio kind of things, but they're surprisingly listenable over a long period of time. I will say be careful about ear tip purchase and maintenance. The stock ones that come with this, if I use them for more than a month daily, they tend to irritate my ear canal. So I tend to take those tips off and put in the more silicone kind that'll sit in an ear more comfortably for long periods of time. But the fidelity is surprisingly clear. I got to the point where I was even stopped switching to my headphones for our mic checks because I could actually understand. Even with the limited frequency response of those little tiny earwigs, I could tell what the signal was, and I could figure out if I had something wrong with it. So I like them.
Next question.
Michael Anderson in Bozeman, Montana is up next. Considering a stereo pair of Rycote SC-08 super-cardioid mics is a more affordable indoor interview mic. They're around $900, he notes. Not sure if they're made anymore. Good option? Better to spend more, cry once with Sennheiser and so forth.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I personally do not have experience with the Rycote mics. I know they came out with them a couple years ago, but the industry has sort of shied away from supporting Rycote. I'm talking about the location sound industry because of unethical business practices by them, specifically even then. Their new mother company, Vinton. So, but going to indoor microphone, speaking about indoor microphones, I would highly recommend just saving up a little bit more and perhaps going with a Sennheiser MKH50. These are the workhorses of the production industry, from narrative work to TV shows to corporate videos. Aside from the Sheps microphones, the MK41 capsules, MKH50s are what you would aside from those what you would see on film sets.
Thank you to all the producers who asked all the questions. We didn't get to all of them today, but we got to as many as we could, and we really appreciate it. This show doesn't happen without your questions. We don't have anything else to talk about. So thank you so much for coming live and being part of the conversation that's in the chat. If you don't know how to get there, you can go to officehours.global/join, and we'll send you emails about how to get in. And so, but thank you for being on the chat. Thank you for asking the questions. And if your question was on a QR code, we'll bring it back in automatically tomorrow. If your question was submitted by you, it's in your notes, which is, you can find a little hamburger in the top right there. So go ahead and look at it there. Thank you so much to the panelists. Can't do this without you either. We don't know who's going to show up every day. So every day we're like, man, this is what the show's going to look like. And so I just want to thank the panelists for that. And thank you also to the incredible back-end crew that makes this possible. There's a small village that wakes up every morning, 7 days a week to make this happen. And sometimes more than 7 times a week to make this happen. And so we really appreciate the incredible work that's done on the engineering side, on the editing side, on the management side, all these other things that are required to make this actually possible. We really appreciate everybody's contribution. Today, if we'd done this in person, the Tlaloc Traversal, we would have traveled 25,000 miles. That's 40,000 kilometers, and that is 197 million bananas for scale. All right, let's go ahead and jump into After Hours. There we go. I saw the question about Rycote, and I was like, they make mics? I was like, when did Rycote start making mics? I missed that. I missed that memo.
I didn't know Vinton had bought them. Vinton's bought a lot of stuff.
Mickey was like,
We all have our I
It's not
really
good
liked
what they
them, and
did.
then all of a sudden they did something weird.
It's always, you know what they say, trust arrives on foot, leaves on horseback.
Horseback, yeah.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
See y'all tomorrow.
Bye bye.